Shalom Aleichem. Welcome. This is a chapter in the book titled Do Not Look to the World for Your Answers. Look at Nature, Volume 1. This is a chapter out of that book titled Ocean of the Mind, written by yours truly, Young Lion. And it reads, Shalom, young brothers and sisters. Peace. This chapter is called Ocean of the Mind. And it's a blessing to be able to share this with you, gather some of your thoughts and opinions, and to engage you in this topic. Let's continue. As we look at nature, it displays and shows forth signs, right? Let us observe the ocean and all of its parameters to bring us a divine and uplifting, inspiring, and intuitive message today. As we are constantly told to not look to the world for our answers, but to look at nature, so shall we do. Behold the ocean, the wide body and great expanse of water that covers 72% of the Earth's surface. This entire body of salt water has 3 divisions, which are the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian Oceans, along with their southern extensions in Antarctica and the Arctic Ocean. But what is the ocean? It is a place of constant motion, constant movement. The ocean is never still and never ceases to cause its waves to stop moving backward and forward, left and right, and here and there. So where am I going with this knowledge, this comparison, this syllogism? I plan on illustrating to you the similarities between the great deep and the great deep mind, the 2 immense expanses. Praise Yahweh. Let us look at the mind, view the mind. Tell me where the mind is located. Point to your mind. No, not the brain. Point to your mind. The brain, figuratively spoken of as the mind, is the human consciousness. It originates in the brain, but is manifested in thought, perception, feeling, will, and memory or imagination. You see, the brain is protected by the skull, and the brain itself protects the mind. The brain is the operating organ of the mind. The brain or mind happens to be divided into 3 sections: the top, the middle, and the back, and has a southern extension called the brain stalk or stem. Interesting how the ocean has waves as our brain sends and receives waves or frequencies. But the similarities are brought home even further when we acknowledge how both ocean and mind is a place of constant motion and movement. Thoughts, messages, and impulses are always going and coming, just as the waves do in the ocean's current. Let us look at the ocean and bring to mind the irascible and sudden devastation brought about by the untamed and unconscious nature and force of the mind when not properly cultivated, understood, and prepared. The ocean, a place of commerce for merchants that travel to different lands and sell, buy, and trade different products and merchandise. Large and small ships and boats are used. Sea vehicles which transport people and things across these waters, which is in between these divided lands. Many different vessels and vehicles and means of transportation is used to accomplish and acquire various objectives. Now remember, the ocean makes up 72% of the Earth's surface. What about the 72% of the encounters you have throughout the day? Us humans in this world today are busy going and coming, maneuvering backwards and forwards, seeking to accomplish our desired ends. our many means and different objectives with our various motives and objectives and intentions. 72% of our life is based not on what happens to us, but how we respond to these situations, circumstances, and encounters. This means that the mind is responsible for 72% of the body's responses to life's challenges. What is the measure of a fully grown brain? I'm just asking, curious. But at any given moment, the ocean can go from being cool, casual, and smooth to being irascible, destructive, and deadly, raging with a fierce and powerful nature. Well, so can the mind. It can go from being cool, calm, and collectively pleasant to becoming aggressive, instinctive, and vicious, brutal, and uncompassionate, all in a split second. A mind can change, and the nature of an individual can change into a devastating and destructive force of nature. Have you ever seen a 20-foot tsunami wave? What about a 20-foot eagle? The ocean carries its waves in currents, being pushed by winds in all different directions, back and forth, left and right, down and up. So is the mind of us brothers and sisters, being pushed, pulled, and influenced by the current of the world, the media's influence in television, also radio broadcasts, erratic behavior that spontaneously occurs in outbreaks and outbursts all around us. We are controlled by our fear, just as the waves of the ocean are controlled by its currents. Thoughts and subliminal suggestions are implanted into our mind at the slightest impulse. A word, act, or indication is just enough nowadays to send our spiritual selves and minds craving, desiring, and longing for a thing, a product, or some attention. And that is why this chapter is titled Ocean of the Mind, because the mind is an ocean, a place of constant motion, which must become calm, still, and controlled. The mind must be understood, as well as the nature and disposition of the mind, in order to conquer it, subdue it, and use it for our purposes, just as the seamen and merchants use the ocean with their vessels to accomplish their trades and merchandising up and down, to and fro, using the various routes traced by ancient travelers and pathways mapped by ancient navigators. We must navigate the mind and travel back to the ancient paths of mental elevation instead of materialistic devastation. The routes to peace of mind, love and happiness, joy, supreme felicity, compared to technological dependency and moral corruption, where life's expectancy and value decreases daily by these sudden, irascible outbursts of violence and misunderstandings, hatred, and quick-temperedness. Life needs to become a time of smooth sailing again, compared to a rat race or a Shark Tank. And this can only be done by stilling the mind and calming the thoughts, allowing peace and tranquility to exist and rule in your hearts toward yourself and others, creating your own harmonious currents and rhythm. And only by having knowledge of self can this become possible. But this is one of the many signs to show you the ocean of the mind. Shalom Aleichem.